Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, Korea are playing Belgium in their final Group H game in the Brazil World Cup. They need to win comfortably to have a chance of advancing to the last 16. President Park Geun-hye decides to retain Jung Hong-won as Prime Minister after her two previous candidates withdrew their nominations. Plus, the Korean government files for asset seizure against the owner of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, June 27th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you are tuned in to Daybreak. Well, our top story this morning, where else could we start but with the 2014 Brazil World Cup, as Korea is playing its final group stage match against Belgium. For the latest scores and details from that and from the rest of the World Cup, we have our sportscaster SJ Lee joining us in the studio. Good morning, SJ.
Good morning, Mark. Obviously, right now this is the big match, final group stage match for Korea right now, going up against Belgium. But they do need a combination of things. They need to have Russia to beat Algeria by 1 goal difference, and also Korea needs to beat Belgium by a 2-goal difference as well. So let's take a look at the highlights of what's going on in the first half so far. Now, the team so far looks very, very different. Several changes were made, including Kim Seung-kyu in as the goalkeeper and Kim Shin-wook in as the one-top. But while the defense improved in this match, no goals being scored in the first half. But just before the end of the first half, a straight red given to Belgium's Defour as the first half ends 0-0. And the current score, of course, going into the second half is 0-0, while Russia and Algeria, Russia is currently up 1-0.
Well, I think the fact that Belgium have a red card means Korea have a much better chance in the second half. Let's hope so anyway. And to no one's surprise, thousands, tens of thousands of Korean fans have stayed up all night to watch the game at a number of different cheering spots across the nation. To get a feeling of what the atmosphere is like with the fans, let's connect to our Shin Se-min, who is at one of the venues in southern Seoul. Se-min.
Good morning, Mark. As you can see behind me, the second half of the game against Team Belgium is just well underway, but with the score still standing at 0-0 as no team has scored a single goal yet. Now, in front of Coeds right here on the street in the southern part of Seoul, the place is overflowing with people chanting and cheering for Team Korea. As you can just hear behind me, they're all wishing for just one thing and one thing only, a victory, and hopefully a ticket to the next round. Now, just like the previous two games, the crowd have been throwing their full support behind Korea. Fans here are not only focused on watching the Korea-Belgium game, but they're also simultaneously monitoring the other Group H match between Russia and Algeria, also into the second half. Now, Russia needs to either win or draw against Algeria for Korea to have any chance of advancing.
As the match between Russia and Algeria is as crucial as the Korea match, I'll be watching both games at once.
Now, as you just heard him, Mark, you might want to turn on your monitor in the office for the match with Russia and Algeria if you are watching the game.
Yeah, we certainly are watching the game here at Arirang, Sem, in both games. And for the cheering squad filling the street there, how long have they been enjoying the festivities there?
Yes, I've been out here I've been enjoying the team for over 5 hours now, the cheering team here out on the street, and since then it has been a very, very busy night. Apparently fans were securing their spots out here since 8 p.m. last night, but the pre-game K-pop performances were keeping them occupied, and they were having performance out here on the stage, keeping the early birds entertained. Now, in in terms of the transportation and the road closures around the area, it would be advisable to take the public transportation if you are coming to this part of Seoul this morning, as roads around this area will remain closed until noon. So for another 6 hours, so that is. And for those people on the early morning commute, best to take the bus or subway to work. Reporting live at Yeongdeung-daero near COEX, this has been Shin Se-min.
Thank you, Semin. Now, let's go back to SJ, because we had the teams in Group G, the so-called Group of Death, playing earlier today, and they're trying to qualify, of course, for the last 16. What happened in those matches?
You know, this is an interesting group here, because all the nations in this group actually still trying to qualify before heading into their 1 a.m. Korea time matches. So let's first take a look at the big match here. We had Germany and the United States squaring off. Now, going into this match, both sides neck and neck without any of the teams scoring the first half of the match. But second half is Thomas Müller, who scores in the 55th minute, giving Germany the 1-0 lead and the win, as Germany finishes first in Group G. Meanwhile, Portugal taking on Ghana. Portugal does get on board thanks to an own goal, but Asamoah Gyan levels it in the 57th minute. Portugal needing a big margin victory here, but final goal comes in the 80th minute as Cristiano Ronaldo scores, giving Portugal the 2-1 win. But with a big 4-0 loss to Germany earlier on, the U.S. advanced to the next round on goal difference.
Well, I have to say I'm quite happy the US have gone through. It's good for the sport if everyone in America gets into soccer, I guess. Let's finish off with Luis Suarez, the bad boy of the moment. He's been banned from all football-related anything. He can't even go into a stadium for 4 months and 9 international matches after he decided to try and nibble on an Italian defender's shoulder, which was quite funny to me at least. And he's being ridiculed on the internet now, I believe.
That's right. This has, been the biggest news, I think, during the past 24 hours right now. Luis Suarez, of course, was not only the first time, it's not the second time, but the third time, right, when he apparently tried to bit Killaney. But now a lot of the fans, despite the fact that he's got the 9-match ban, and despite the fact that he has the 4-month suspension, this is also going to affect his playing days with Liverpool as well. He's also fined more than $100,000 US dollars for this incident. But while he's probably a little bit angry with this issue, fans all over the world right now, when it comes to football, they're having fun with this, and it's become actually a new internet sensation. So taking a look at the picture here, whether it be a parody of Jaws or Jurassic Park, fans are actually having fun making fun of Luis Suarez for his incident against Italy earlier this week when he did bite Georgia Killaney. Now, this new internet sensation obviously coming in a week after Van Persing had its share of popularity as well. So what an interesting picture we have over there.
Well, you can certainly open a few bottles of beer with those teeth, I'm sure. But thank you very much for your report, SJ.
Always a pleasure.
Now, into the rest of the day's news. In a surprise move on Thursday, President Park Geun-hye decided to retain her current Prime Minister after a series of nomination setbacks left a vacuum in her envisioned state reform drive. Our Chae-son has this report.
In a surprise announcement on Thursday, the presidential office said President Park had rejected Prime Minister Chung Hong-won's previous offer to resign and asked him to continue working for the nation with a sense of duty. Prime Minister Chung had expressed a wish to step down in the wake of the Sewol-ho ferry accident 2 months ago. It is the first time in Korea's constitutional history that a prime minister will be staying on after rendering a resignation. The presidential press secretary said President Park, who has promised a massive restructuring of the government and a bolstering of the national safety system following April's ferry tragedy, went through great pains before making the latest decision.
The administrative vacuum and division of public opinion intensified due to the previous nominations. The president has decided the situation can no longer be left alone.
In regards to the presidential office's personnel verification system, which has been heavily criticized after the recent back-to-back nominee withdrawals, a new senior secretary will be put in charge of finding people to fill positions and verifying their credentials. Upon Thursday's announcement, the Prime Minister vowed to pour all his energy into correcting irregularities in Korean society and making the country a safer place to live. He also said when necessary, he would not hesitate to offer his views to the president on state matters. The ruling party said the president's decision was understandable and that she had put a priority on minimizing the administrative vacuum and moving forward with the running of state affairs. The main opposition, on the other hand, criticized the administration for failing to meet the people's expectations to reform Korean society in the aftermath of the ferry disaster. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
The two Koreas failed to make much progress during talks on Thursday on ways to improve the passage system and internet services at their jointly run Kaesong industrial complex. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
For the first time in 6 months, officials from the two Koreas met on Thursday to discuss matters related to their jointly run Kaesong industrial complex. But the meeting ended without concrete results. Key issues put forth by South Korea included the installment of internet services and the implementation of an electronic entry system to allow South Korean workers to commute freely in and out of the complex. However, North Korea wanted to discuss matters related to the wages of North Korean workers.
We could not reach a conclusion on any special issue and had different agendas in mind, but we each clearly expressed our stances.
South Korea proposed to hold their next meeting in August, but the North did not give a clear answer. The quarterly meeting of the Joint Committee of the Business Park has been at a standstill since December last year, when inter-Korean relations soured following military drills between Seoul and Washington. With some 50,000 North Koreans working for more than 120 South Korean factories, the Kaesong complex is seen as the last remaining symbol of inter-Korean cooperation. Last year, the factory zone sat idle for 5 months after North Korea unilaterally closed it down amid escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula. Some had taken Thursday's talks as a sign of thawing inter-Korean ties, but it seems conditions on the peninsula will remain icy for now. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea fired 3 short-range projectiles off its east coast on Thursday afternoon local time. South Korea's defense ministry says the projectiles took off from near Wonsan, a coastal town east of Pyongyang, and flew roughly 200 kilometers before landing in waters between North Korea and Japan. South Korea is still trying to figure out what kind of projectiles they were and why they were fired. North Korea has test-fired several short and medium-range rockets and missiles in recent months and is threatening to conduct a new 4th nuclear test. Now, the South Korean government has launched the process to exercise its right of indemnity against the owner and officials connected to the sunken Sewol-ho ferry. Judicial officials said on Thursday that the government filed last Friday for the sequestration of ferry owner Yoo Byung-un's assets. The government also wants to seize the assets of the chief and 4 officials of the ferry operator, Chung Hae-jin Corporation, and 8 crew members. The total amount sought is over $395 million, and this includes property, vehicles and bonds. The seized assets are intended to be used to compensate the victims and their families. More than 300 people, mostly high school students, were killed in the April 16th disaster. The Seoul Central Court ordered the government to submit further evidence for its request.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
The Korean government is busy working on its budget proposals for next year. With a focus on fiscal soundness, some sectors will see their budgets cut when 2015 rolls around. Others, related to the economy and safety, may see a boost. Our Kim Jeon reports.
The government has cut out a larger portion of next year's budget for promoting public safety and the economy, money that may come from reduced investments in social overhead capital projects, among others. The Ministry of Strategy and Finance said the budgetary scale for 2015 is around $371 billion, up 6% from this year's budget. It's the smallest rate of increase in 5 years, mainly due to the government strengthening its budgetary rules. It implemented a pay-as-you-go system, a practice of financing new spending commitments with currently available funds. This means when ministries introduce new bills that require increased spending, the funding must come through cuts to other bills. The ministry has already requested cuts to projects related to social overhead capital and the environmental and agriculture sectors. The government also plans to cut down on the number of projects that overlap and has asked ministries and local municipalities to strengthen cooperation for efficiency. The ministry plans to finalize its budget proposal by September this year. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Korean women are becoming more active in the workplace, in fact, in record numbers in recent years. But that doesn't necessarily mean they are enjoying a gender-equal and well-balanced working environment. Our Kwon So-ah has this report.
More and more Korean women are working. A recent study shows more than half of women participated in the Korean economy last year, marking a 7-year high. And they prefer working rather than staying at home changing diapers and cooking for their kids. But this doesn't necessarily mean they enjoy their professional lives more, but rather they choose it because it equals out to less stress. In fact, 7 out of 10 moms with young children in this survey said they felt stressed when at home, citing the burden of childcare as the #1 challenge in getting a job and being able to keep it. And that's why nearly half of them wished for the expansion of private and public daycare centers in the country. Social bias is seen as the second biggest obstacle for female professionals. And such tough environment comes against the backdrop of the huge gap in the economic participation rate between men and women, as it stood at 23% last year. There is a glimpse of a trend change, however. The perception of only women bearing the responsibility of taking care of children is beginning to shift slowly, as the number of men taking paternity leave has more than doubled compared to 10 years ago, standing at 3.3% in 2013. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Korea is fast becoming the destination of choice for medical tourists. Last year, it saw a record number of foreigners come to Korea for various treatments and procedures, and numbers are expected to continue going up. Arirang shows us Korea's approach to patient care.
Rizika Oksana is on vacation from Ukraine.
Before coming here, I knew that Koreans cared a lot about their looks, so I wanted to experience Korea's medical cosmetic service.
Her tour package begins at an Oriental medicine clinic where she undergoes a special treatment to improve skin elasticity. Then it's off to a health center that specializes in endoscopy procedures. For Seoul's Gangnam district, the medical tour program is merely the beginning of bigger plans.
In the future, we're going to combine medical services and tourist destinations into one package.
The efforts come as no surprise. Since 2009, when the central government made it legal for hospitals to accept foreign patients, there's been a boom, with an average yearly growth rate of 37%.
While foreigners enjoy a wider assortment of medical services, plastic surgery still remains the biggest draw. For that, the most popular destination is Gangnam, home to nearly half of the country's plastic surgery clinics.
Riding the wave, plastic surgery clinics are investing more in overseas advertisement. This plastic surgery clinic has what it calls a Chinese coordinator.
I work on advertisements on Chinese portal sites like Baidu and Weibo, and also work on a Chinese version of the clinic's homepage.
Korea's medical services alone rank 4th place in the OECD. But with human resources and growth potential factored in, the overall competitiveness of its medical tourism drops to 19th. Experts say the government needs to do more to support medical tourism.
There needs to be a government-backed control tower specifically overseeing medical tourism. Right now, the support for medical tourism is scattered among different ministries and state-run institutes.
The Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry also says the government should lift regulations to allow investments on hospitals. Yurian, Arirang News.
Now, good news for those of us who like to stay cool during the hot summer, because the government plans to lift certain restrictions on electricity usage this summer, as it does not expect there to be any serious power shortages. Public and government offices, however, will remain subject to the restrictions. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said on Thursday that the country's peak power demand during the summer is estimated to reach 79 million kilowatts. The country's maximum generation capacity is 84.5 million kilowatts. That's up compared to the 77 million kilowatts from last year, when a number of nuclear reactors in the country were shut down when they were found to contain parts supplied with fake safety certificates. Government and public offices are required to maintain room temperatures at 28 degrees Celsius or above, as in previous years, but they will be given greater discretion. Commercial buildings that have been required to keep their temperatures at 26 degrees Celsius in previous years will only now be advised to do so. Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Friday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark. Diplomatic pressure is on Russia as the Ukrainian government and separatists engage in peace talks to end the conflict in Ukraine's east this morning. Pro-Russian separatists had agreed Thursday to restart the talks as Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko warned if it's only to buy time, the ceasefire, which expires Friday, likely won't be extended. The resumption comes as German Chancellor Angela Merkel engaged Russian President Vladimir Putin via phone for a second time in 2 days to discuss how to end the crisis. Chancellor Angela Merkel and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry have both been urging more action from Moscow as EU leaders meet on this Friday to review their package of sanctions against Russia. Also on this Friday, President Poroshenko is set to sign a controversial EU association agreement, the same agreement that ousted Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych had refused to sign. Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki says he supports any Syrian airstrikes against Sunni militants, bringing the neighboring states one step closer against a common enemy. Prime Minister Maliki told the BBC this week's attacks against ISIL militants took place on the Syrian side of the Qaim border crossing, though military and rebel sources had earlier said it was carried out on Iraqi territory. He also lamented the great rebel advance, saying it could have been avoided if American air power had come quickly. He said Baghdad purchased 36 American fighter jets since the start of the crisis, but that the delivery had been, quote, slow and very long-winded. Australian authorities have announced they are shifting their search zone for missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 further south in the Indian Ocean. The area is about 1,800 kilometers west of Perth, Australia, and covers waters measuring more than 60,000 square kilometers, or 70 times larger than the region already searched. Authorities also said they believe someone on board deliberately switched on the autopilot system after the Beijing-bound plane made a U-turn toward the southern Indian Ocean, where it ran out of fuel and crashed. The search area was shifted following a more detailed analysis of possible airspeeds, flight paths, and the so-called pings, or digital handshakes, between Flight 370 and Inmarsat. The World Health Organization will gather 11 nations to a roundtable as it calls for drastic action to counter the deadliest Ebola outbreak in history. As of Sunday, nearly 400 deaths from more than 630 cases of the deadly hemorrhagic fever was recorded across the West African states of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Medical experts warn it could spread to even more countries. The medical charity group Doctors Without Borders this week called the outbreak out of control. The significant increase in cases come despite the dispatch of 150 experts to Guinea following the first signs of the virus in March.
And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Stay tuned for Korea Today coming up in about half an hour's time for all the latest on the World Cup game. And we'll be back at the same time on Monday. Until then, goodbye.